Please be seated. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness? Here. Mr. Bartlett? Mr. Holness? Dr. Clark? Dr. Chang? Ms. Grange? Mr. McKenzie? Mr. Chuck? Dr. Tufton? Mrs. Williams? Mr. Vaz? Mrs. Malawi Fort? Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Main, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Terrelong, Dr. Dunn, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Witter, Ms. Smith, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Henry, he's here, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright.
Members, just before I greet and welcome us all back to the sittings of Parliament this afternoon, I'm sure you recognize you have some nice new instruments sitting in front of you. There are a few of us who got some demonstrations as to how our new system works. And if you listen, you might hear, and if you watch, you will learn. Members, if you listen, you will hear. If you watch, you will learn. Whenever you press, it's your button to indicate that you're going to speak. Your mic will indicate there is a green hue around the mic, the top of the mic. And then I catch your eye. I will press a button which will release your mic, and it will go red, which means it's your time to speak, and you will be able to speak. If a number of persons press their buttons at the same time, the answers, the mics, whenever I press my button to release for you to speak, will in fact answer in the order that you have pressed your buttons. And of course, if you have spoken enough and you're not to speak anymore, the speaker has the authority. There's a little button here that I will press, and you will find there is no more voice for you. So with that, it's a learning curve. So we are going to learn how to use the new system. So members, I want this afternoon to welcome you back to the parliamentary sittings. And in doing so, I start by welcoming all of those who are listening back. And I want to welcome the clerk to the Houses of Parliament and her staff, and to welcome those also joining us in the gallery today, and those watching us on TV, and those joining us by various social media platforms. Members, I want to trust that the break afforded everyone the opportunity to spend a little more time with your families, get some rest, and to prepare for an active legislative year. It is in this parliamentary year that we intend, and I chair that committee, we intend to complete the job descriptions for parliamentarians, and we intend to pass new laws and to amend several existing ones. Members, I ask now, as Speaker of this House, that members read carefully the laws governing this Parliament and our standing orders, because these will be the key to maintaining good order in this House. And I look forward to our sessions being conducted with civility and the working of Parliament, and from us all as Jamaicans who have chosen to serve the people of this country. So with these few opening remarks, I want to welcome us all. I don't want to compete with you, members, even as I speak. All right, members? I also want to say at the very opening that this evening we have two very special guests with us this afternoon. We have two very special guests with us, and they are from the Parliament of Uganda. They are the Honorable Elijah Okupa and the Honorable Katuntu. The President and I, and Leader of House Business, a number of persons from the opposition had the opportunity to meet with them, and we had, the President and I, a courtesy call in our office, and we were happy to have them, and we trust they will feel welcome, and wish them safe traveling, God's mercies, as they travel back to Uganda tomorrow morning. Members, prior to the summer break, I did advise the House that I had written to the Attorney General on proceedings relating to the tabling of reports from the Integrity Commission and from the Auditor General. The Attorney General has stated in his response to me on the cover of letter dated 14th of July 2023 that how the Parliament receives and tables reports from the Integrity Commission is not in fact regulated by the Act or the standing orders that govern our proceedings. He maintains that the Speaker may table the report. So may table the report before it is submitted to the Oversight Committee, or may table the report after it is sent to the Oversight Committee. The Attorney General has indicated that this Parliament may consider the procedure that has been used in South Africa and Australia as it relates to the setting out of specific procedures for tabling documents in Parliament. Myself, having looked through the standing orders, I recognize that we do not, in this Parliament, have any documented procedure on any item in the standing orders dealing with the tabling of reports. The only mention of reports coming to Parliament under the order of business that you all have before you and is here every week is the item which is numbered 9, which reads reports from committees. So, members, I want to engage you and ask you that if you look now and direct your attention to the order of business before you, which speaks to reports from committees. Nowhere at all in the standing orders does it refer to how reports from external bodies are to be treated. And as such, it is my thought that the Rules Committee could or may sit to consider the suggestion from the Attorney General's chambers in order that we could set out a procedure as to how reports from the external committees should be dealt with. In relation to Auditor General's reports, to date, the Auditor General's chambers has not submitted to me a final opinion on how the Auditor General's reports on public bodies are to be dealt with. I, having read Section 13A of the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act and Section 30 of the Financial Audit and Administration Act, and each member should see on the table in front of them a copy of both sections. Section 13 of the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act and Section 30 of the Financial Audit and Administration Act. And having read those sections, I'm very satisfied that the Auditor General's reports on public bodies must only be tabled after the Auditor General advises that the relevant minister has received the report and, most importantly, the stated time of 2 months has passed. If the 2 months has passed, and the minister has not brought the report to Parliament, once that is done, this Speaker will table the report immediately. So, members, I am encouraging you all to read the Section 13A of the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act and Section 30 of the Financial Audit and Administration Act so that we may all weigh in at the appropriate time on the debate. As it stands, we now have at September 30, 2021, there are about 146 active bodies listed on the Ministry of Finance's websites. So, members, those are my opening remarks, and those are my opening remarks so far. I want, however, before we go any further this afternoon, to recognize also this evening the passing of the Honorable R. Danvers Williams, OJCD, who passed just recently. And I want to begin with my own tribute to a gentleman who was a giant in this society. So we want to pay tribute to the Honorable R. Danny Williams, founder and president for life of Jamaica, now Sagicor Life, and former chairman of the Sagicor board, as well as immediate past chairman of the Jamaica Broilers Group.
Madam Speaker, before we go into the tribute for Danny Williams, which I know members on both sides would want to contribute, and I certainly would, I would like you to provide some clarification on your original statement. First, could you provide to the Parliament the opinion received by the Attorney General's Department, the full opinion, so that the Parliament can review it? That's the first thing. Secondly, you indicated that you did not receive a final opinion in relation to the Auditor General's report. Did you receive a draft opinion from the Attorney General's Department on that? And if so, could that be provided to us so that we can review it? And finally, in the absence of clarity, I believe we should revert to what the Parliament has developed as a custom to table reports once they are received at the announcement stage. If the opinion states otherwise, then I believe we can change our procedures. But in the absence of clarity, there's a practice that has developed over the entire period of the life of this Parliament, and I believe we should revert to that. You have indicated that the Auditor General had sent 3 reports to you. 2 have been tabled. From the time those reports were sent, I know the 2-month period would have passed for the 3rd. What do you intend to do with the 3rd report, which the Auditor General sent to you, which is yet to be tabled?
Member, I want to assure all the members of this House that the practices of this Parliament are being maintained. My opening remarks today relate to a welcome to us all. I'm responding to a newspaper clipping that spoke to us, advising you as to the reports, the responses I have received from the Auditor General and the Attorney General. And in due course, when we get to announcements, I will speak on the matters there. But I have, as a Speaker of this House, chosen, since we broke, and I did say I was going to write to the Attorney General's chambers, and I think I have made it abundantly clear that I have received 2 responses. One from the Attorney General, written on his hand, which says whatever the Speaker decides in terms of how the reports are to be done, it's the way it will. And there is a written thing which I can certainly share with all members, and I will in due course because I have them here. And also in terms of the Auditor General's report that I am awaiting. I wrote back to his chambers last week, Wednesday, sending my first letter, the response I received, the queries, and I have not heard. Those 2 are open to be shared with you. And at the time we get to announcements, we are going to deal with it. But it is my choice as a Speaker. I have decided in my opening remarks, since the public is looking towards it, to welcome, which is what I have done, to address the 2 questions that I sent in relation to the Integrity Commission and to the Auditor General's report, and I have indicated, and I will share the responses, but I am assuring you that the response in relation to the Integrity Commission, and I can read, I will share the entire letter, but I have no objections in reading his conclusion and his last sentence. I will, and I will do so in due course. I am going to, and I will do so in due course. But I will share with you, I'll have them copied and shared with you all, is that how the Parliament operates with regard to tabling of reports is a matter for the internal workings of Parliament and guided by the Speaker. We have no actual, I'm looking for the, I'm going to read, I'm sharing everything with you, but on the cover of letter dated 14th July 2023, under the signature of Derek McCoy, CDKC Attorney General, and his last paragraph says, how the Parliament, if you've asked a question, try and listen, how the Parliament receives and tables reports, and whether the Oversight Committee considers report before or after tabling in a House are now not regulated by the Act or the standing orders. These are in the power of Parliament to determine by its existing procedures. The Speaker may table the reports before or after submitting them to the Oversight Committee. This is the last sentence in his conclusion, and I shall be happy to have it, the full letter, sent around to everyone. So, ladies, members of Parliament, I really think out of respect to the life of the Honorable R. Danvers Williams, OJCD, I would like as Speaker of this House to pay tribute to him. And as I said earlier, we want to pay tribute to the Honorable R. Danvers Danny Williams, founder and president of Life of Jamaica, now Sagicor Life, and former chairman of Sagicor Life Board, as well as immediate past chairman of the Jamaica Broilers Group. We want this afternoon to celebrate the life of a visionary leader, a distinguished philanthropist, and a dedicated servant of Jamaica who has left an indelible mark on the nation and its people. Danny Williams's unwavering commitment to Jamaica transcended both public and private sectors. His illustrious career included service as a parliamentarian from 1977 to 1980, where he held various roles such as Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Minister of Marketing and Commerce, and Minister of Industry and Commerce. And during this period, he also served as a senator. In recognition of his outstanding contributions, Danny Williams was awarded the Order of Distinction, Commander Class, in 1972, followed by Jamaica's fourth highest honor, the Order of Jamaica, in 1993, for his voluntary service to community. While he achieved great success in the insurance industry and indeed beyond, Danny Williams remained a humble and grounded individual. His formal education, limited to the secondary level at Jamaica College, stands as a testament to his self-made success. His life has served as an inspiration to countless individuals, illustrating that with hard work, with discipline, with dedication, and an unwavering commitment to one's goals, dreams can indeed become a reality. And so, members, we remember Danny Williams for his indomitable spirit, his unyielding dedication to our beloved country, and the enduring impact he has made on our nation and its people. May his memory serve as a perpetual reminder that with passion, with perseverance, and dedication, each of us has the potential to leave a lasting legacy for generations to come. So, on behalf of the Parliament, I want to extend our heartfelt condolences to his beloved wife. I think they said of some 69 years, his children, his grandchildren, and other relatives and friends, and ask that they may find comfort in knowing that his memory will forever be etched in our hearts, and his legacy will continue to inspire us for generations. May his soul rest in peace, and light perpetual ever shine upon him. Just
Thank
a minute.
you.
Let me, yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to pay a tribute to Danny Williams and to highlight two aspects of what has been an illustrious career in life. Danny was what you would consider a true patriot, someone who was committed to Jamaica, its people, and its development. But there are two areas that I want to speak to. One was his love for his alma mater, Jamaica College, and his passion for education in particular. Danny took it as his personal project to see to what I would call the transformation of Jamaica College. And it has been a transformation not just physically, but it has been a transformation in the quality of the education delivered at that institution. Danny mobilized resources from old boys, what you see at JC in terms of an auditorium, a track, a stadium, all of those things. But more importantly, he was committed to improving the quality of education. He served on the board, he served on the trust, and beyond his commitment to JC, Danny became a mentor, a guide, and a friend to so many young, not just JC old boys, but entrepreneurs. Young men who started off in business, who he took under his wings and provided support for them. In some cases, he sat on boards that of their companies. He helped them to mobilize resources for their companies. But he was passionate about unleashing that entrepreneurial spirit. And throughout his entire life, he was someone who you could call on, who you could ask for advice, who was always willing to provide that guidance. He served with distinction both in the public and the private sector. And up until his death, his passion was to see Jamaica become the best that it could. So on certainly my own behalf, I want to extend condolences to his family and friends. He has lived a full life, a rich life, and a life which is well worth emulating. Thank you. Madam Speaker, I too would like to pay tribute to the late Honorable Danny Williams. The member who spoke before me spoke like a true Jamaica College old boy. As one who went to a so-called college down the road from JC. But, Madam Speaker, not to repeat what the member said about the Honorable Danny Williams and his contribution to Jamaica College. But many don't remember him for being a farmer, a politician, and also one who contributed to the R. Danny Williams School for the Deaf in Hope, up by Hope Gardens. One who sat on many private sector boards and public sector boards, but one who was a true Jamaican, one who transcended politics, even being a member of the People's National Party, a former minister of government in the 70s, but one who saw Jamaica as a project to make Jamaica a better place for those who were born here. But, Madam Speaker, Danny Williams was a father. He had a daughter who preceded him, but he's also a father, a grandfather, and a great-grandfather. One who I met in my sojourn before I went to East Rural St. Andrew, because I myself was a coffee farmer who had to deal with Danny Williams in the late 80s and the early 90s. But he was integral back then to the coffee industry, because then only a few farmers or farm cooperatives had a license to export coffee. And himself and a few other farmers had one such license. So us, the smaller farmers, had to sell to their cooperative for the export of coffee. But, Madam Speaker, Jamaica College, of which I'm an old boy also, is also better off for the chairmanship and persons like Danny Williams. You have Carl Hendrickson. You have the late chairman of Grace Kennedy. Yeah, in the 80s, who were also Carlton Alexander as old boys, Douglas Graham, and Danny Williams were farmers in the cooperative itself. But Richard Ashheim. But Danny Williams was Jamaica College, the epitome of what a JC old boy. And a contribution to a school, as the members said, about the development of the school, but not only the infrastructure, but the mentoring of young men that attended Jamaica College and outside of Jamaica College. His touch on the insurance industry and his life in the insurance industry is evident in the R. Danny Williams Life of Jamaica, what it was, and now Sagicor Group. He was chairman of the Sagicor Group, that the building in New Kingston, that was the LOAJ building, was named after Danny Williams. Madam Speaker, I think Jamaica was better off for having Danny Williams as a son of the soil. May his soul continue to rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I too would like to just say a few words in relation to the passing of the late R. Danvers Williams, but from a different perspective. Danny Williams and his family were close family friends, both to my late dad and his sister, Sheila, who happens to be the same age. First and foremost, he was a family man. Before anything else, his family is what came first. He did have a big family, and unfortunately had two daughters that predeceased him, one just recently. But as was said publicly, he was married to Aunt Shirley for 69 years, and he was 89. Therefore, you can see that he got married at the tender age of 20 to his love of his life. I had the privilege of being a neighbor, and when I say a neighbor, not an immediate next door neighbor, because we lived in Irish Town, and he lived at Bamboo Lodge, and I lived just down on Dusty Road. So I had several occasions to sit with him in the cool, salubrious hills of St. Andrew and discuss everything from politics to anything else that was topical. Our political discussion didn't always go well, but one thing he did have is respect for others and their opinions. So we shared many Sunday lunches with his family, and as was said earlier, he had a large family which included not only kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids, but son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, all who became a part of his immediate family. I will miss him based on our relationship, and of course, condolences to his lovely wife, Shirley, who I refer to as Aunt Shirley, and all of his immediate family, extended family, and of course, Jamaicans of all walks of life who he touched almost on a daily basis. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our Danny Williams, great Jamaican patriot, I want to join in the remarks given by colleagues on both sides and yourself in honor of this great Jamaican, a man who spanned both the private sector and public sector, who gave tremendous service in both sectors, a founder of the indigenous life insurance industry in Jamaica, a founder of Life of Jamaica, now Sagicor Life Jamaica, chairman of that company for many years, somebody who was a mentor to many in the life insurance industry, an inspiration to them, and whose name will always be remembered in that industry as one of its founding fathers in Jamaica. On the public sector side, I believe he was in the Senate. He was a Minister of Industry and Commerce under the government of Michael Mann in the 1970s, and his interest in the People's National Party continued right through the rest of his life until his unfortunate passing recently. He was a legend as a fundraiser and as a philanthropist. We've heard what he did and the contribution he made to the transformation of Jamaica College. But there was also the Tony Thwaites Wing, for example, where he played a seminal role in the establishment of that medical facility at the University Hospital of the West Indies, which has been an important addition to the range of medical facilities available in Jamaica. And there are many other worthy causes where, once Danny Williams took up the mantle, those who were looking to promote those causes could rest assured that funding would be raised for it. Such was the integrity of the man, such was the respect that he enjoyed across all sectors of the society, across political parties, and right across Jamaica. His reach was unique, and the person's willingness to give him a positive response was assured. He was a man of integrity. He was a man of his word. He was somebody who didn't beat around the bush. He told it as he saw it, and he will be dearly missed. Our condolences go out to Mrs. Williams, his children, grandchildren, and other relatives. May his soul rest in peace and light perpetually shine upon the late, great R. Danny Williams. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to join in the tributes for the Honorable R. Danny Williams. Jamaica has lost a true Jamaican stalwart and nation builder. Sure. Madam Speaker, I'm just trying to adjust my mic here. It's kind of loose. But I will continue, Madam Speaker. Danny Williams was driven to give service to the people of Jamaica in any way he could, be it in the public or private sphere, and he had friends and associates across the political divide. I will remember the Honorable Danny Williams for his generosity of spirit, which anyone who met him could attest to. He was a true gentleman, a charming man, kind, and always very accommodating. I want to express my deepest condolences to his wife and other family members. I pray that they will be comforted by the fact that their husband, father, and grandfather made a positive contribution to the lives of so many, many Jamaicans. May his soul rest in peace, and may light perpetual shine on him. So, Madam Speaker, at this time, we will continue the business of the House. Thank you so much.
And I will ask the clerk to the Houses of Parliament to send a card to his family expressing the condolences to them on our behalf. Members, I'm going to ask us at this point to stand for a minute's silence in recognition of his passing. May his soul rest in peace, and light perpetual ever shine upon him. Statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, there will be two statements today. One by the Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Education and Youth, and the other by the Honorable Pernell Charles, Minister of Labour and Social Security.
Do we have copies, Minister?
Yes, we do. Madam Speaker, I start my statement to Parliament regarding Back to School 2023 by welcoming back all of our teachers, our principals, and the staff across the length and breadth of the education sector, from early childhood to tertiary. I also acknowledge the work of all our board chairmen and women and the many members who give of their service in the interest of our schools. We particularly want to welcome the 1,155 new teachers to the education sector. We look forward to the positive impact amidst the renewed commitment from all our stakeholders. A special welcome to all our students whom we are profoundly grateful to serve at a time such as this. Madam Speaker, I express gratitude on behalf of all Jamaicans to the thousands of teachers, administrators, and principals who continue to give of their best in the development of our nation's children. And note that the Ministry of Education and Youth does not take such commitment for granted. As we welcome all of our teachers, students, and principals, we acknowledge with great sorrow the sudden passing of Tisha Patrick Rowe, principal of Fullerswood Primary School. I visited with the school community this morning. We acknowledge as well the passing of the principal of Jacks Hill Primary. Hers was suddenly as well. Mr. Walter, teacher from Stacyville Primary, who suffered a brief period of illness, he also passed. Madam Speaker, the immediate and school families are in our prayers, and we continue to provide psychosocial support as required. Madam Speaker, in our prayers as well, if you would permit me to say, it's the family of member Paulwell, reported missing our mother and 10-year-old daughter. As you know, Madam Speaker, the CPFSA, which is the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, is in the portfolio of the Ministry of Education and Youth, and it deals with all matters concerning children. However, my concern is not just ministerial, but as a fellow Jamaican, a mother, and a colleague member of Parliament. We pray for a safe return for both mother and daughter. Madam Speaker, the new school year 2023-2024 started off very well all across the country. Our national Back to School launch, which was hosted by Region 3, which is St. Anne and Trelawney, had hundreds of students and teachers. So too was the enthusiasm and excitement at the Back to School launch in Manchester for Manchester schools under the patronage of Custis Green. We're coming into this school year very encouraged by the PEP, CSEC, CAPE, and City and Guilds reports, and the parenting work that the Division of School Services and the National Parent Support Commission have done. They have managed to train a little over 41,000 parents in better parenting skills. We have great expectations for improved parent-child and parent-teacher relationships and interactions, in our school this school year. If we look quickly at the results, Madam Speaker, starting with the PEP results, when we compare 2023 versus 2019, because that's the most, that's the like-for-like comparison that we can make, considering that in the intervening years, we had the COVID-19 pandemic and we had to modify the exams. When we look at the percentage of students in the proficient and highly proficient categories, we saw that in maths, 57% of our students were in these two categories versus 41% in 2019. And in science, 64% of our students were in the proficient and highly proficient category versus 49% in 2019. In social studies, 67% in 2023 versus 63% in 2019. And in language arts, 60% versus 55%. If we turn to CSEC, starting with the registration, and if we look at the numbers overall, it is clear that we have recovered from the depths of the pandemic, and we are above where we were prior to the pandemic in terms of registration for CSEC. A similar pattern is observed when broken out by gender. Registration for both males and females is not only showing recovery, but the figures are also higher than where we were during the pandemic. For sit-ins, we look at the national numbers for sit-ins, those who actually sat the exam. We see 33,664 students sat CSEC versus 28,226 last year and versus 32,617 prior to the pandemic. Again, the pattern is the same for males and females, with an increase in the numbers that sat the CSEC exams over last year and prior to the pandemic. Madam Speaker, learning recovery is happening. When we look as well at the number of students passing with grades 1 to 3, we can see the recovery there as well, year on year, and we're almost back to where we were prior to the pandemic. If we look at the passes in English, mathematics, and information technology, almost back to where we were prior to the pandemic. We do have to do some additional work. Madam Speaker, we have to have a concerted effort this year to enable us to get back to where we were in maths prior to the pandemic. And while we wholeheartedly celebrate the 7.4 percentage point improvement over the results last year, we must get back to where we were prior to the pandemic and move forward from there. Madam Speaker, we celebrate our students who sat and passed CAPE subjects. Approximately 90% of students passed with grades accepted by tertiary institutions for further studies. Significantly improved pass rates were recorded for a number of subjects in CAPE 1, including pure maths, applied maths, agricultural science, chemistry, and economics. So, Madam Speaker, we celebrate and encourage our new cohort of students as they make it through this school year. Madam Speaker, I turn now to our teachers. As you know, and as all Jamaicans know, there has been sudden resignation of scores of teachers, especially in the week before back to school, despite the fact that the Education Act and regulation call for permanent teachers to give 3 months' notice, and for those who are temporary to give 1 month notice. In some cases, resignation letters were dated the same day as the effective date of the registration. While we cannot stop teachers from making their personal decisions to resign, we ask for observance of the law. With the subsequent employment of new teachers at very short notice, the Ministry of Education and Youth has had to implement new mechanisms to ensure that new teachers are paid in the month of September. Madam Speaker, under normal circumstances, for a teacher to be paid in a particular month, the employment documents must be submitted by the last working day of the previous month. For example, to be paid in September, all relevant employment documents must be submitted to the ministry by the last working day in the month of August. However, given that many of the new teachers were employed this month, the ministry extended the deadline for submission to September 12th.
Minister, your time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, could the minister's time be extended to allow her to complete her presentation?
Members, the question before the House is that the minister be given sufficient time to complete her statement to the House. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, given that many of the new teachers were employed this month, the ministry extended the deadline for submission to September 12th and deployed the accounting staff to work overtime and on weekends to process the submissions. The ministry received a total of 782 new teachers filed on or before the September 12, 2023 deadline. Of this total, 624 new teachers' files were processed, and 158 new teachers' files were deemed incomplete because they did not meet the required standard to enable payment. 373 new teachers' files were submitted after the extended deadline of September 12. Given the importance of salary payment to our teachers, the ministry will do an out-of-cycle payroll during the last week of September to ensure that the 373 new teachers' files that were received late, which is after September 12, the 158 new teachers with incomplete files, and any other submissions that are sent to the ministry by September 25th are processed once all required payment documents are submitted. To ensure that these efforts are understood by school administrators, we did the following. A schools bulletin was sent to schools early in the month of September to provide guidance. The ministry also directed regional directors, education officers, and its human resource officers to support principals in ensuring that new teachers' files are actioned. 2 virtual meetings were also held on Monday, September 18, one for principals of infant and primary schools and one for principals of secondary schools to update them on the concerted effort to ensure all teachers are paid this month. As the processing of teachers' payroll includes the Accountant General's office, the Accountant General confirmed that the payroll process has already begun, with $2 billion already released into the accounts of Bursa-paid schools, which are those high schools that pay teachers directly. Madam Speaker, there's an all-hands-on-deck effort to ensure salary payments for all teachers, including new teachers, for this month, despite the short period that schools had to recruit and hire new teachers. The Ministry of Education and Youth is grateful to all who have worked on this process. We continue to respond to the needs of our teachers, our principals, our students, and parents. Madam Speaker, together we go forward for this school year with great anticipation for what lies ahead. Together, we work to transform the education sector. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. I learned quickly, so I'm following the new rules. Madam Speaker, let me thank the Minister for her statement on back to school. And I wanted to begin by also welcoming, but more importantly, thanking the teachers, the parents, the students, and volunteers who really have been carrying the work of our schools and education and who have gotten us to really where we are. Because I know how difficult it has been for many of them to get their classrooms prepared for the opening of school, including, as they normally do, some of their own resources, just to make sure that it is as comfortable and as friendly for their students as they would like it to be. I also join in the comments made by the Minister in terms of the teachers and principals who we have lost in the system and who are no longer here with us. And also to any parent or members who at this time are starting what is a kind of new paradigm for them. I also want to place on record my own personal sentiments as well to our colleague, MP Paulwell. And my prayer is that both his daughter and her mother will be found safe and soon. Madam Speaker, I heard the Minister speak about the 1,155 new teachers. Just for completeness of record, it would be important or interesting to know how many actually left the system, whether it is retiring, or, left with short notice, as well as even those who are on long leave, just so that we have a good sense as to how many are out of the system and what does 1,155 really mean to us net. Absolutely. I am pleased, Minister, to see that the PEP grades are moving in the right direction. I really would love at some point to have us hear what is the plan to get them to where we would like to get them. Because the truth of the matter is that 40% of our students still underperforming in terms of math, yes, and English is still not where we would want to be, and English at this time. In fact, if we look at the subjects, math, science, social studies, and language arts, they really are not where they would need to be. And given the underperformance noted by the Patterson report, at this point, I think we should be talking about a comprehensive plan that gets us closer to that 100% or whatever that is going to be. I am also wondering, Minister, you did not include in your presentation, certainly in my cursory glance while listening and listening to you and reading at the same time, I did not hear what were the plans for our grade 7 for those students who are just leaving primary school with those PEP results, to ensure that there is a plan to get them very quickly up to grade level. I think that too would be important. Minister, I know that some schools, I'm not sure if you're aware, even as we speak, are concerned about the resources that they have at the disposal of our students. As you would imagine, there are some schools where you might have, whether it's your PEP students or any class for that matter, where we have students without textbooks, without, not just textbooks, without even the workbooks. Because sometimes we forget some of our parents and what they can afford. Is there anything in place to help some of our parents who just don't have that at this time? I note, Minister, also that you are saying that certainly in terms of our CSEC results and so on, that both enrollment and performance seems to be inching up to pre-pandemic levels. What I wasn't sure in hearing you say that is what does that really mean? The Patterson report also spoke about some pre-pandemic levels, which were unsatisfactory, and I'm not sure what your assessment of where we are now would be. I also...
Member, I'm going to ask the House Leader to assist you. Your 5 minutes for questions have been exceeded. Members, the question before the House is that more time be allotted to the member, the opposition person on spokesperson on education, to ask questions in relation to the minister's presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Member?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. I really am, I'm in fact wrapping up. Minister, I also wanted to know if we have given up on those students who would have been in grades 9, 10, and 11 during the pandemic. And where are they now, and what are we doing with them? I suspect that these are students for whom we should be making some provisions. I'm interested in knowing what that is. And that would complete my statement, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I answer the questions, let me say actually thank you to all colleague MPs for all your efforts as well for back to school. I know that many of you had medical fairs, you handed out a lot of bags, a lot of book vouchers, and you did a lot for our students in terms of those efforts from the resources of the government. Your first question, member, in terms of what does the 1155 new teachers mean? It means that we have more than adequate number of teachers replaced in the system than those who resigned. Additionally, if you recall as well, for teachers who are gone on their long leave for 4 months or 8 months, there was very good take-up of that call to teachers who wanted to remain in the classroom to teach, who wanted to be their own replacement. You asked about the plans for grade 7, those students coming into high school who may need support, continued support. And grade 7, right? Coming into high school, right. And you should know, member, that we have information on all of our students as to exactly where they are in their learning profile. That information travels with them as they transition to high school, so the new teacher knows exactly where they are. In high school, there are many efforts across a lot of high schools, especially in the area of literacy. I am happy to say that we have been piloting additional literacy efforts in our schools, and just this week I went to the presentation of 2 of those programs, and I'm excited by the results that I see that our children who are in the program have attained in terms of where they started versus where they ended up after 10 hours of being in the program and using the particular software. So there will be a more concentrated focus on literacy at all levels of the system. We already know that we need to get our children up to that level where they're able to read, comprehend, and to be able to make the transition to other subject areas. In terms of resources, this year, the government added $1 billion more to the resources available for textbooks. And we were able to give more textbooks, put more textbooks into the system. We also, as you would have heard, continue to introduce e-textbooks so that our children, more of our children can have access, especially at the high school level. I know as well that there are supplementary book lists that teachers encourage parents to take to the bookstore and to buy the books. For those parents, I know, the costs of books is quite high. And so I know that many of you, as Member of Parliament, would have maximized on your book vouchers to parents to help to defray the cost of these books. And that is a resource that's provided by this government. In terms of pre-pandemic levels, I pointed out, rather than present the numbers, just looking at this year versus last year and talking about the good results year on year that we've seen in the different exams, I presented a 5-year look at where we are today, not only versus last year or versus the depths of the pandemic, but what did we look like before the pandemic. And in areas of strengths, I pointed that out, but also I pointed out the area of weakness, especially in mathematics, to say that yes, while we have recovered 7.4 percentage point versus last year, we are still not where we were in the pandemic. So we have to get back there and then move beyond that. If we can leapfrog that, obviously, that's better for us. In terms of students, our numbers are showing that, and I'm assuming this is a question, that we've been able to find and encourage back to school the children who were missing during the pandemic. You know, coming out of the pandemic, we launched a significant Find the Child initiative, yard to yard. Teachers went out, guidance counselors went out, volunteers went out, and our numbers are showing that we are back to those pre-pandemic levels. But we have to get beyond that, because we know that there are children, students, who are not consistently in school, and therefore we've got to orient the program now towards encouraging students or children to be in school 5 days per week, not 3 or 4, but the full 5 days. We understand the economic challenges, and to the best of our ability, we will work with other entities, other sister ministries, to see how best we can bring resources to those parents. Thank you.
Just seeking some clarification, Madam Speaker. Today to the Minister, when I spoke about the performance it was at PEP that I was concerned about in terms of a more comprehensive program as to how we get to where we want to get to. I know that MPs did do quite a bit in terms of book vouchers and so on, but I'm still aware, Madam Speaker, that for some of our schools, there are children who actually turn up to school without workbooks. And all I'm saying is, I'm sure this is not a first time that that is happening. That is what is the plan to make sure that some of our students who are not able to come to school with their workbooks, that some provision can be made. In terms of the performance on CSEC, I didn't mention that at all, outside of acknowledging that they were at pre-pandemic levels. The question I was asking is not for those students who would have been in grade 7, 8, or 9 during pandemic, who are now in the upper high school now. I'm talking about those who were almost at the end of high school that we lost during the pandemic and that we have not been able to pull back in the system. If that's just a lost generation, or are we going to be doing a program that is specifically geared at reaching them?
So, member, in responding to your question about those children, well, you mentioned something about lost generation, lost children. Well, I thought my answer, was very clear in saying that our efforts to search and find all the children who are missing, who are not on any of our platforms, who are not turning in work that was given to them, we have searched and found them. So there is no missing children out there. And our efforts now are to ensure that they are in school 5 days per week. That is where our focus is right now. And in terms of the workbooks, this government started to provide workbooks to our students during the pandemic, and we are continuing. Yes, we're not fully there yet, but as our budgets allow year after year, we will get to that point. Thank you.
Thanks you all very much. House Leader. Minister Charles.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If I could ask firstly for permission to speak from a seat that's not my own, so that my colleague can also join me.
Permission has been granted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, colleagues, I rise today to address a matter of great importance and significance for the well-being and future of our beloved nation, Jamaica. The subject at hand pertains to the imperative. Sorry. Yes. Madam Speaker, my mic is still red. I figure it's...
Red means danger, and red means that you can speak in here.
I thank you, Madam Speaker, for that clarity. Let me start over. Madam Speaker, honorable colleagues, I rise today to address a matter of great significance for the well-being and future of our beloved nation, Jamaica. The subject at hand pertains to the imperative reform of the Program of Advancement through Health and Education, commonly known to us as PATH. This program has been a cornerstone of our efforts to reduce poverty and empower our most vulnerable citizens for years. And today, I wish to shed light on the proposed reforms and their potential impact on our society. Madam Speaker, since 2002, PATH has served as a critical lifeline for countless Jamaican families, providing essential financial assistance, healthcare support, and educational opportunities to the most needy among us. As at August 2023, there are approximately 285,000 beneficiaries, which includes 128,000 families registered on PATH. Children account for 65% of the beneficiary cohort, followed by the elderly, which accounts for a further 27%. The other categories, Madam Speaker, of beneficiaries are pregnant and lactating women, indigent adults, and persons with disabilities, which combined account for the remaining 8%. In 2021, 2 years ago, the Tracer study confirmed that persons who grew up in PATH-supported households were less likely to need state support later. This is evidence that the program has been successful in increasing human capital development of beneficiary families and has therefore fulfilled its long-term mandate of breaking the intergenerational poverty cycle in participating families. In so doing, over the past 2 years, 3,194 students have benefited from one-off grants to continue their post-secondary education. These grants range in value from $15,000 to $30,000 each. For the same period, 8,292 tertiary students benefited from bursaries of $100,000 each per year to support their studies towards obtaining bachelor's degrees. Over the years, thousands of beneficiaries have credited their success to the support their family received through PATH. Many, Madam Speaker, are now contributing to the nation's development as social workers, teachers, nurses, doctors, engineers, and at least one Rhodes Scholar who is now pursuing his PhD. However, Madam Speaker, we recognize that the evolving challenges of our time necessitate a comprehensive re-evaluation of the program. Despite the achievements of PATH over the years, there have been concerns with the technical design, the general rules, and the processes that affect the overall efficiency, optimal delivery, and impact of these programs. Specifically, the concerns surround the application and selection criteria, the health and education conditionalities, payment methods, management information systems, technology for delivery, benefit levels, and the human resource structure and capacity. This overhaul of the program, mandated by our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, provides us with the opportunity to implement reforms to strengthen the targeting mechanism of PATH, ensuring, Madam Speaker, that the assistance reaches those who need it the most. By leveraging modern data and technology, we will better identify and assist families living in poverty, thereby reducing the inefficiencies of the system and also reducing the risk of misuse of the program. The PATH reform process will be managed by a steering committee which will review recommendations supported by 2 technical working groups. Decisions will be made through a consultative process. The steering committee will serve as an advisory committee and will make decisions on the reform process. This committee will be informed by the work of the technical working groups. Madam Speaker, I will chair the steering committee, and the members will include representatives from across government, the Ministries of Labour and Social Security, Health and Wellness, Education and Youth, Local Government and Rural Development, and others, PIOJ, and also the members of the technical working groups. Timely updates and reports will be provided to Cabinet on the progress of the reform. Further, Madam Speaker, with respect to the technical working groups, 1 will review the technical design of PATH, including the selection criteria and the benefit levels. And the 2nd will review the general rules of the program, including the conditionalities and the criteria for continued eligibility. Madam Speaker, the revamped PATH program will place a renewed emphasis on education. We recognize that education is the foundation upon which future opportunities are built. The reforms will include increased support for school attendance, access to quality educational resources, and vocational training, all geared towards breaking the cycle of poverty through knowledge and skill development, Madam Speaker. Healthcare will remain a cornerstone of PATH as well. The reforms will expand the healthcare component to address the evolving health needs of our citizens. Madam Speaker, my Minister of State, Dr. the Honorable Norman Dunn, and I, along with the senior management team of the ministry, have started the process of internal consultation with staff and customers in the parish offices so that we can receive direct feedback on operations at the local level. Madam Speaker, in addition to that direct interaction and engagement, at least 3 and perhaps more regional public consultations will be convened, and they will take the format of town hall meetings to provide an opportunity for all Jamaicans, the first of which will be held by the end of October, and we'll give details to follow in short order. Madam Speaker, we invite members of this Honourable House to attend, and we welcome all members' participation in this process by the submission of your questions, your thoughts, and your ideas so that they can be incorporated into our engagements. Critical stakeholders in these engagements, Madam Speaker, include teachers, guidance counselors and school principals, inspectors of the poor, public health nurses, representatives from the Social Development Commission, members of Parliament, councillors, caretakers, the Council of Voluntary Social Services, citizens associations, faith-based organizations, PATH beneficiaries, present and also past, and applicants, Madam Speaker, and also members of the media. Madam Speaker, PATH has been referenced by the World Bank as a model for conditional cash transfer programs, and some countries in Latin America and the Caribbean and Africa have also studied this model. As such, an integral part of the reform process will involve consultations with the World Bank and the Ministry of Finance and Public Service. Lastly, Madam Speaker, these reforms will align with our international commitments and also our projected sustainable development goals, reinforcing Jamaica's dedication to achieving a more equitable and prosperous society. Our focus, Madam Speaker, is to provide a new path, which will, 1, revise the current selection criteria to improve the identification of the poor and vulnerable, while reviewing current conditionalities regarding health and education to ensure improved outcomes. 2, employ the use of a more modern social protection information system to enable better monitoring of PATH households and improved access to additional social protection benefits and services. 3, to facilitate the expansion of our labor or work programs for all PATH families to enable progress from poverty to self-sufficiency. 4, to modify the existing payment structure and also to review the payment collection methods. Madam Speaker, these are a few of the issues that we have observed over time, and I'm certain through our Member of Parliaments, through the engagements that we will be having across the country, we expect that we will have a more substantive collection of concerns and recommendations to help guide the process of this reform. In closing, Madam Speaker, the reform of the PATH program is not a mere policy change. It is a declaration of our commitment to the well-being of our people. It is an investment in the future of Jamaica, where poverty is significantly reduced, education is accessible to all, health care is comprehensive, and opportunities abound. Madam Speaker, today we use this opportunity not only to notify members of this honorable House, but to seek to engage you and to involve all members of Parliament in this critical process of overhauling the PATH program. Accordingly, I implore each member to support this critical initiative by engaging your constituents and passing their recommendations to me in a timely manner so that we can collectively contribute to a brighter, fairer, and more prosperous Jamaica for all citizens. One love.
Are there any questions from the...
Madam Speaker, as the spokesperson on Labor and Social Security, I wanted to make some, yes, thank you.
So you know you have 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I want first of all to say that I welcome the thrust and without qualifications. And I say that, Madam Speaker, because in April of this year, when I stood up and spoke in the sectoral debate, one of the things that I said in concluding, and I'm reading from it now, the next PNP government will undertake comprehensive review of the social protection programs such as PATH and NIS to ensure improved targeting and broader coverage. And if you know how we operate with the recommendations that we make and the claims that we make in terms of what needs to be done, it is made based on sound analysis of where we are. And we are not afraid to have the government begin that work. And so I welcome that. I just want, and it's in keeping with what I had asked for, improved targeting and broader coverage. I believe the direction in terms of looking at education as an important driver is extremely important. We did say that. At the time, I had also asked about how the allocations in terms of to PATH beneficiaries aligned with the poverty map. So you need, I think you might be the minister who also needs to make sure that we have a current poverty map so we can look and see where that is. And to ensure that when you map where the greatest allocations have been made for PATH, that it bears some relationship. And I say that because I am clear in looking at some of the areas where we have larger numbers of PATH beneficiaries, that it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the poverty that exists in that area. I also wanted to say, Minister, that I welcome the town hall meetings. I want to make sure that, as you have said, we discuss it with the persons in the constituencies. And I also I noticed when you listed the priority for participants, that it included PATH applicants and beneficiaries. There are many parents who have given up hope in terms of how they have seen the system work. And so I think it should be more broadly in terms of parents, yes? And many of our grandparents who are dealing with children who also should be there. I also wanted, I wasn't sure if I saw that, Minister, that the seniors, 80% of our, 80% of the poorest quintile of seniors have no kind of social protection at all. And I didn't see that there in my cursory glance. And so I don't know if you have that as part of your target, but I'd love to hear what you have to say around that. Is the second, it's okay. You know, because we get it as you begin to speak, sometimes we can't give it justice in terms of what we're doing. So I wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to say, Minister, is that the processing time, right? In terms of the system that you're using, I didn't see as part of what you are aiming to do. I know you did speak about a more modern system. I'm hoping that included in that is a more transparent and faster processing time and communication with the beneficiaries. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, you know, in my budget presentation in March, I had raised the issue of the issues related to PATH. The minister in his closing commented that you are going to undertake a review, so I'm happy that we are at this point where there's a review being undertaken. I want to encourage the minister, though, given the importance of PATH to national development, I looked at the composition of the steering committee, and I wanted to encourage you to include the opposition spokesman on that committee. This is something which has been implemented across successive governments. I believe the input from the opposition is important in the redesign of this program. So I urge that collaborative approach. I know you're going to be doing town halls and other consultations, but the role of the opposition here, I think, is important and should be included in that in the steering committee which you are chairing.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Minister, as was said previously by the opposition spokesman on labor and social security, it is something the review is welcome. The challenge, though, is one, how long will this review take? Because there are many parents and students out there who are suffering as a consequence of not being able to get on path. It's one of the most difficult things to do. And I'm happy that you have embarked on this particular one, because the whole aspect of having a fridge at home that denies persons to be on the program is something that ought to be looked at. Secondly, what is the status as it relates to school? You mentioned that education is you're emphasizing education. But inadvertently, what happens, Madam Speaker, is that in many instances, the child who does not come to school simply because the amount of money that the parent gets per period is insufficient to send the child to school each day, and they are penalized and get bumped off path, and you repeat the whole process of poverty. So that needs to be looked at. Thirdly, you mentioned health as well. The fact is that the child who goes to the, for want of a better word right now, the checkup clinics, and I ensure that they go at the particular periods, is important because it ensures that proper health care is given to the child. But what I'd like in the considerations going forward is that we do not run the risk of penalizing, as we do in the health sector, in the education sector, the same health sector, because there are going to be misses at some of those clinics and they don't catch up. Let us approach this thing with some amount of flexibility, because the rigid nature of it now disincentivizes the program, and what you're trying to prevent inadvertently, at the end of the day, you are going to not be able to prevent if you continue on this path. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I have one quick question for the Minister. Minister, you mentioned employing the use of a more modern social protection information system to enable better monitoring of past households and improve access. Could you tell us a bit more about that system? Does it exist? Is it going to be developed? How will it be developed? And what form is it likely to take? I think it's a very important aspect of this reform.
Just in addition to the information system, Minister, because I too am happy that a review is being taken, because I think many of your staff members within the Ministry of Labour gets blamed for not accepting the acceptance of families or individuals on the PATH program, when it is actually an algorithm that makes the decision on behalf of in what you input. But while you're doing a review of the system itself, and it is something that I'm sure in many parish offices, the location for the Ministry of Labour is an area where it is high concentration of individuals coming to the location, and some of the locations are not conducive for customer service, where you have a lot of individuals standing up outside in lines in the sun for hours, not being able to get through or to go inside in comfort, because that is what it is about. It's about customer service, how it is that we serve the public that actually attend upon these offices. We're talking about pensioners. We're talking about elderly persons who are there dealing with PATH for their grandchildren or themselves. So in the review, to see how best we can make these locations somewhere that is conducive for the citizens that attend upon these offices.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues, for your interventions. Let me firstly say to the opposition spokesperson on labor and social security, as I heard you, I remembered that it is Senior Citizens Month, and I should say, for perhaps both of us, to Jamaica, Happy Senior Citizens Month. No, to all, 60 years and over. And with age comes wisdom. But I thank you for your support, genuinely. And I think that there is an opportunity for us, as member beside you said, that we should perhaps look on how we can collaborate and integrate you into the process of evaluating the system. The intention was to extend to you that offering. Let me also indicate in terms of time for the review of the program, we have set out a schedule that details for us now an estimate of a first phase of at least 3 to 4 months, where we intend for the steering committee and the technical working groups to work aggressively on the issues, and we're hoping that we can start to be implementing some of the recommendations by early next year. Dr. Guy, I want to welcome the points that you made. If you read through the presentation, you'll see that it is aligned with a lot of what we are putting forward. And one of the reasons why we are actually reviewing the compliance requirements in that regard. And I want to indicate also to the point in relation to the management information system, or the modern information system, and how it will be developed and the form. The current system that is utilized is more than a decade old, perhaps 13 years old, and it no longer achieves the result effectively as it was doing when it was first instituted. Technology has changed, the circumstances have evolved, and so the system needs to be fit for purpose. So it is our intention to utilize this process to identify a system that will be effective in achieving the goals that respect the changes in our environment and respect the fact, as was mentioned, that the inclusion of a fridge in your house may no longer be a quantitative basis for you to be eliminated. As I say that, I want to hasten to indicate that there is a process. The information system is intended to be the preliminary process. And if it is that you're found to be below the line and not approved for whatever reason, whatever variable, there is an appeal process. And a part of what we will be evaluating is not just the information systems and the criteria, but that appeal process, which is intended to be more expansive and more quantitative and allow for our social workers to utilize their observation to see whether or not someone is fit to be approved for the program or not. So it's that's all a part of what the evaluation is going to take into consideration. We're going to be looking on systems that are there. We will be engaged. We have already started to talk to persons who are providing their modeling, and we will come up with a determination of what is best fit to suit the needs for our Jamaican society. I hope that I've answered the many questions. Certainly so.
Thank you. Announcements?
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: annual report and audited financial statements of the Public Accountancy Board for the period 2021-2022. Ministry paper number 81 of 2023, entitled Annual Report of the Public Accountancy Board for the year ended March 31, 2022. Annual report of the Jamaica Deposit Insurance Corporation for the period 2021-2022. Ministry paper number
82 of 2022 entitled Annual Report of the Jamaica Deposit Insurance Corporation for the year ended March 31, 2022. Annual report on audited financial statements of the All Island Jamaica Cane Farmers Association for the period 2021-2029 and its ministry paper number 83 of 2023. Annual report on audited financial statements of the Agro Investment Corporation for the period 2020-2021 and its ministry paper number 84 of 2023 for the year ended March 31, 2021. Annual report on audited financial statements of the National Solid Waste Management Authority for the period 2021-2022. Annual report of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency for the period 2018-2019. Annual report of the Council of Community Colleges of Jamaica for the periods 2019-2020 and 2020-2021. Annual report of the National Education Trust for the periods 2017 to 2018, 2018 to 2019, and 2020 to 2021. The Capital Development Fund Withdrawal Number 1 Order 2023 and its resolution under the Bauxite Production Levy Act. The Auditor General's Department certified appropriation accounts for head 2800 from the Ministry of Justice for the year 2020-10 to 2020-11, head 2800 for the Ministry of Justice for 2013-2014 and for 2014-2015. Head 2808 Capital and for the Ministry of Justice for the year 2011-2012. Head 2808 for the Ministry of Justice for the period 2012-2013 and 2800 recurrent for the Ministry of Justice for the year 2012-2013. Head 15,000 Office of the Prime Minister for the year 2018-2019. Head 28,025 for the Director of Prosecutions for the years 2012 to 2013 and 2016 to 2017. Head 20,011 Accountant General's Department for the years 2018-2016, 2015-2016, and 2018-2019. Head 19,000C Capital for the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation for the year 2019-2020. Head 15,010 the Jamaica Information Service for the year 2018-2019. Head 1,000 for the Governor General and Staff for the year 2018-2019. And head 28,031 for the Auditor General's Department for the years 2014-2015 and 2016-2017. And the Integrity Commission's investigation report into concerns that the Honorable Mrs. Marisa Dalrymple-Philibert, Member of Parliament and Speaker of the House of Representatives, made false statements in the statutory declarations filed by her for the years 2015 to 2021, and the indicative ruling regarding said report.
Members, to ensure that there is no accusation of conflict of interest, I, as a speaker this afternoon, has decided to table the Integrity Commission's report on an investigation concerning my statutory declarations. I have done so because I have absolutely nothing to hide. After the report is tabled today, the report is being sent to the Integrity Oversight Committee for its deliberations. I am also, as Speaker of this House, and in the interest of transparency, sending the report to the Ethics Committee under Standing Orders 73F and 73G. All members of this House will then be given an opportunity to discuss the contents of the report in both the Integrity Oversight Committee meetings and in the Ethics Committee meetings. And additionally, all members will be given another opportunity to discuss the contents of both reports when they are returned to this House. Bills brought from the Senate. Do you have a point of order?
I have a question for you,
No,
arising from what you just said.
Member, whenever a matter comes before this House and is referred to a committee, there is no debate on the matter. The report that has come from the Integrity Committee concerns my own statutory declarations. I have therefore, as Speaker of this House, as I have absolutely nothing to hide, I have, contrary to my ruling, as I have done previously, tabled the report. It now goes to the Integrity Oversight Committee for its deliberations, and I have added another committee. It goes to the Ethics Committee, and it's for its deliberations. And like in everything else, when it comes back here after being deliberated by members, every member of this House will have an opportunity to consider and be a part of the debate. And that is my ruling, and I ask us all as members of this House to let us move on with the agenda as it has been passed to the committee. If the question is opening a debate, I'm not going to do that. It has been referred. The matter is tabled and it is public. The matter is tabled, it is public knowledge, and any committee that I sit on, or when it is deliberated in this House, I will, as Speaker, recuse myself. It has been referred to 2 committees, and that is my ruling. Now I move on with the agenda. Bills brought from the Senate.
Leader of the opposition, you rose to ask a question based on what the Speaker said. The Speaker's position is very clear. Clear to everybody. A report was tabled in the House. There will be no question. We move on.
Can you just take your seat for a moment? I did when I opened this parliament this afternoon, invited every member of this house that whatever we do in this house, we ought to conduct ourselves with the civility worthy of this parliament and the Jamaican people we have chosen to serve. I have also invited all members to read the standing orders. Read it. I am following, and I did say I would follow the procedures strictly. I am doing so, and unless a member has a point of order and can bring my attention to a standing order, the matter, like any other matter, is referred to two committees. No one in this house, including the Speaker, is above investigation. The matters are referred to both committees, and I now wish to move on with the thing. Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions, papers, reports from committees, no. Member, out of respect as a leader of the opposition, I am going to direct you to the standing orders as it relates to a ruling of the Speaker in this House. And I have ruled that this matter goes to the Oversight Committee for deliberations and to that. And I am now moving on. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. Yeah. Members, I move back, just for bills brought from the Senate and petitions, papers, reports from committees, and we are now at notices of motions given orally. Notices of motions given orally, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motion. The Bauxite Production Levy Act, Capital Development Fund, Withdrawal Number 1, Order 2023. Be it resolved that the Capital Development Fund, Withdrawal Number 1, Order 2023, under the Bauxite Production Levy Act, which was laid on the table of the House on the 19th day of September 2023, be approved. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I'll move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Minister. On behalf of the Minister of National Security.
I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read the first time a bill shortly entitled, The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Act 2023.
Minister, no, that's it. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to introduce and have read the first time a bill shortly entitled, The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Act 2023.
Okay. Member, the question is for the standing, members, the question is for the standing orders to be suspended to enable the member to introduce and have read a first time reading of the bill shortly entitled The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Act 2023. An act to amend the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move to introduce and have read the first time a bill shortly entitled, The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Act 2023.
A bill shortly entitled, The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Act 2023, read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill.
On the agenda, public business. Minister of Finance, Minister Clark.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Members, those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce the Bauxite Production Act, Capital Development Fund, Withdrawal Number 1, Order 2023. Madam Speaker, as you and my colleagues in this Honourable House are aware, the Jamaica Bauxite Institute, established by the Government of Jamaica in 1975 as a regulatory planning and development agency to manage the sovereign aspects of the government's participation in the bauxite alumina industry. The JBI was made and is responsible for monitoring and studying the alumina industry and advising the government on matters pertaining to the industry locally and internationally. And, Madam Speaker, is primarily funded from levies on the bauxite industry through the Capital Development Fund. Madam Speaker, JBI, Jamaica Bauxite Institute's primary operations are not revenue-generating activities. However, over the years, the JBI has expanded its operations to include the provision of laboratory services on a commercial basis that generates some revenues. As their primary function, the JBI continues to contribute to the bauxite and alumina industry in Jamaica through research and continued monitoring, which encourages bauxite companies to remain compliant with applicable laws and regulations. Madam Speaker, the Bauxite Production Levy Act, Capital Development Fund Regulations 1974 vests the responsibility for the operations of the CDF with the Managing Committee. The Development Bank of Jamaica performed management functions of the CDF during the period 2017-18 to 21-22. The Cabinet, by way of Decision 2722, dated August 22, 2022, gave approval for the appointment of the Managing Committee chaired by Financial Secretary Darlene Morrison of the CDF for the period August 22nd to August 21st, 2025, which is expected to provide additional oversight of the CDF. Madam Speaker, this withdrawal order, in addition to funding Jamaica Bauxite Institute's operational expenditure, also includes a $2.5 million payment to the DBJ for outstanding management fees over the period 2017-18 to 2021-22 for their provision of accounting and administrative services to the fund. The $500,000 per year fee for the management of the CDF was established in 1993 and has remained unchanged. For the fiscal year 23-24, total budgetary support from the Capital Development Fund is expected to cover 70% of the JBI's operating expenditure of $402 million. The remaining 30% is expected to be funded from other income and reserves. Madam Speaker, this amount is included in the approved Jamaica body's estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year ending March 2024. Madam Speaker, the JBI has been granted budgetary support totaling $1.225 billion from the Capital Development Fund over the 5-year period 2018-19 to 2022-23. The Capital Development Fund balance has gradually increased over the last 5 years, given the expiration of waivers on the Bauxite levy on April 1st, 2018. Madam Speaker, the CDF received inflows totaling $4.865 billion during the 5-year period to 22-23. And before that, the amounts in the Capital Development Fund were under serious pressure, either stagnant or declining. Notably, during the financial year 2021-22, the outstanding bauxite levy of $2.481 billion was remitted by UC Rosal Jamaica Limited for the periods December 2018 and 2019, contributing to the significant increase in the Capital Development Fund balance from $1.677 billion as at March 2021 to $4.9 billion as at March 31st, 2023. Madam Speaker, it is proposed that a withdrawal of $282 million be made from the Capital Development Fund in line with the Bauxite Production Levy Act and Cabinet Decision 423 dated April 6, 2023 in budgetary support for the JBI for fiscal year 2023-24. It is also proposed that a withdrawal be made from the CDF for the payment of outstanding management fees of $2.5 million to the DBJ for fiscal years 2017-18 to 21-22. Madam Speaker, as I have emphasized since I have started to pilot these orders annually, we are committed to continue to only withdraw from the Capital Development Fund in line with the Bauxite Production Levy Act to facilitate the budgetary support of the JBI. That is not how withdrawals from the Capital Development Fund have been handled over the past several decades. Had they been handled the way we are handling them now, the Capital Development Fund would have tens of billions of dollars. Madam Speaker, as I've emphasized, Madam Speaker, the Bauxite Production Levy Act Capital Development Fund Withdrawal Number 1 Order Resolution 2023 is hereby submitted to this Honourable House for approval.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion brought by the Minister be approved. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The motion is approved.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. Madam Speaker, I now rise to begin debate on the bill entitled the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment Number 2 Act for 2023. Madam Speaker, this bill seeks to integrate the functions of the Audit Commission into the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service by way of an amendment of the Financial Administration and Audit Act to repeal the provisions relating to the Audit Commission. Madam Speaker, the Audit Commission was established on the 12th day of April 2005 as a body charged with the responsibilities for ensuring continued effectiveness of audit committees within government departments. In 2009, the Audit Commission was enacted as a body corporate by amendments made to the FAA Act, resulting in statutory establishments of its functions and authority. Madam Speaker, this Honourable House would recall the Government of Jamaica's policy on the categorization and rationalization of public bodies, which seeks to apply principle-based approaches to the categorization and rationalization of public bodies to achieve a reduction in their numbers as well as facilitate improved operational efficiencies. Among the options to categorize and rationalize public bodies were to merge, close, and divest certain public bodies within government. Madam Speaker, and to reintegrate others. Madam Speaker, amongst the public bodies to be closed and reintegrated into the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service is the Audit Commission, which was established pursuant to Section 33C, subsection 1 of the FAA Act as a statutory body. Under the FAA Act, the Audit Commission was charged with the function of evaluating the performance of audit committees in order to ensure their continued effectiveness, promoting best practices in the operation of audit committees, monitoring the performance of each audit committee against its charter, performing such other functions as are assigned to it by the Minister, amongst other things. Madam Speaker, these functions are now to be undertaken by the Internal Audit Directorate, a unit within the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Madam Speaker, with the integration of the functions of the Audit Commission into the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, the government would have continued its objective of merging, closing, and divesting public bodies under the Public Sector Rationalization Program. Let me now, Madam Speaker, take the House through the clauses of the bill. Clause 1, Madam Speaker, addresses preliminary issues of the bill. It sets out the short title, Construction and Commencement of the Act, which is titled the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment Number 2 Act of 2023, and must be read and construed as one with the Financial Administration and Audit Act, hereinafter referred to as the Principal Act, and all amendments thereto. Clause 2 amends Section 2 of the Principal Act by deleting the definition of Audit Commission and inserting in the appropriate sequence a definition for the Internal Audit Directorate, which means the Internal Audit Directorate in the Ministry with responsibility for finance. This clause further amends Section 2 by deleting from the definition of charter the words Audit Commission and substituting, therefore, the words Internal Audit Directorate. Madam Speaker, it is to be noted that the substitution of the Internal Audit Directorate in place of the Audit Commission does not mean that the functions of the Audit Commission will cease, since the work of the Audit Commission is an important apparatus to the integrity and accountability of government. Essentially, this integration will preserve the independence of audit committees within the governance framework of central government. Clause 3 amends Section 33A and Section 33B by deleting the words Audit Commission wherever they appear and substituting, in each case, the Internal Audit Directorate. Madam Speaker, Clause 4 also provides an amendment to the heading Audit Commission appearing immediately before Section 33C by deleting same and substituting, therefore, the heading Internal Audit Directorate. Clause 5, Madam Speaker, repeals Section 33C of the Principal Act. Clause 6A, Madam Speaker, provides for the amendment of Section 33D by deleting the marginal notes and substituting, therefore, as the new marginal notes, functions of the Internal Audit Directorate. Subclause B of this clause is further amended by deleting the words Audit Commission wherever it appears and substituting in each case the words Internal Audit Directorate. In subclause C, Madam Speaker, subsection 1F of section 33D is amended by deleting the word and substituting therefore a full stop. Subclause D amends section 33D by deleting subsection 1G. Subclause EI of clause 6 provides for the amendment of 33D2 by deleting paragraph B and substituting a new paragraph B to read, recommend to the Cabinet Secretary the removal of any of the members of an audit committee. And subclause E subsection 2 of clause 6 is amended by deleting paragraph C of section 33D. Madam Speaker, it is important that this Honourable House notes that with the repeal of the provisions establishing the Audit Commission, all its functions will be undertaken by the Internal Audit Directorate, save for the appointment and removal of members of audit committees and their chairman, which will be undertaken by the Cabinet Secretary on the recommendation of the Internal Audit Directorate as outlined in clause 6 above. The rationale for this, Madam Speaker, is to maintain the independence of audit committees. Clause 7 repeals section 33E, 33F, 33G, 33H, and 33I of the Principal Act. Clause 8, Madam Speaker, repeals and replaces section 33J by substituting a new 33J1, report on audit committees, and the new provision provides that the Internal Audit Directorate is mandated to submit a report to the Cabinet Secretary and the Minister dealing with activities of the Audit Committee during the relevant financial year, immediately after the end of each financial year and no later than 6 months after the end of the relevant financial year. Madam Speaker, this clause is further amended at subclause 2(1)(a), which provides for the Cabinet Secretary to transmit a copy of the aforementioned report to each permanent secretary. Finally, subclause 2(1)(b) grants the Minister the power to table a copy of the report in the Houses of Representatives as soon as possible, but no later than the 31st day of December after the end of the relevant financial year. Madam Speaker, clause 9 repeals sections 33K, 33L, 33M, and 33N of the Principal Act. Clause 10 amends section 33O and 33P by deleting the words Audit Commission wherever they appear and substituting in each case the words Internal Audit Directorate. Clause 11 repeals and replaces section 33Q with a new 33Q, which outlines that each member of an audit committee and each member of staff of the Internal Audit Directorate is to act honestly and in good faith and exercise the care, diligence, and skill that a prudent man would exercise in carrying out their functions under the Act. Madam Speaker, clause 12 amends section 33R by deleting the word Audit Commission and inserting therefore the words member of staff of the Internal Audit Directorate. Clause 13 amends the marginal notes of section 33S by deleting the word commission and substituting therefore the words Internal Audit Directorate, and is also amended by deleting the words Audit Commission and inserting therefore Internal Audit Directorate. Clause 14, Madam Speaker, deletes section 33T and substitutes a new 33T, which sets out that the Minister may amend the first schedule subject to affirmative resolution. Madam Speaker, clause 15 provides for the amendment of paragraph 1 of the first schedule by deleting the words Audit Commission and Commission, and also deleting the words Audit Commission in paragraphs 2, 1, 3, 1, 5, 2, 6, and 7, and substituting therefore in each case the words Cabinet Secretary. This clause is further amended by deleting the words Audit Commission in paragraph 9 and 10 2A, and substituting therefore in each case the words Internal Audit Directorate. Madam Speaker, this clause is also amended by deleting subparagraph C and renumbering subparagraph D to F as C to E. Madam Speaker, clause 16 repeals the second schedule of the Principal Act, and clause 17 provides for the amendment of section 31 of the Local Government Financing and Financial Management Act by deleting subsection 3. Finally, Madam Speaker, the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons provides an overview of how the Audit Commission was established as a body corporate by way of an amendment to the FAA Act in 2009, which resulted in the statutory establishment of its functions and authority. The contents of the bill, Madam Speaker, will give effect to the decision to reintegrate the functions of the Audit Commission into a ministry, department, or agency of government. Madam Speaker, I now invite members of this Honourable House to support the passage of the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment No. 2 Act 2023 to facilitate the integration of the Audit Commission into the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service.
Members, if there are no contributions, the question before you is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Further Amend the Financial Administration and Audit Act and to Provide for Connected Matters, read a second time.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. No, I won't come down. I'll stay right here. Members, I put clause 3. Yes. If it is agreed by all the members sitting in the committee, may we put all the clauses together? We have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and the title and the enacting clause. Those in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Members, the question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with no amendments. Those in favor? Aye. Members of the House, I now report to you that having completed the committee stage, the bill has been passed through committee with no amendments. Minister?
Mike, you have to get used to this now, Madam Speaker. You have to, you know.
Maybe your brain is a little sharper than mine, but I'm going to get there.
Yes. Madam Speaker, I ask that the bill be read a third time.
The question before the House is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Those against?
A bill entitled An Act to Further Amend the Financial Administration and Audit Act and to Provide for Connected Matters, read a third time and passed.
House Leader? Minister Vaz, are we going through? Minister Vaz, press your mic, and I'll give you. Right, go ahead, Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Cybercrimes Act, which was promulgated in December 2015, makes provision in Section 25 for its review by a Joint Select Committee of the House of Parliament after the expiration of 3 years from the date of commencement of the Act. Considering this provision, a special select committee comprising of members of this Honorable House and the Senate was convened to consider and report on the operation of the Act. The Joint Select Committee commenced its deliberation March 24, 2021, and held 21 meetings, last of which took place on April 19, 2023. With a view to ensuring wider stakeholder consultations, public notices were placed in the Sunday newspapers, both the Observer and the Gleaner, on March 28, 2021, and on April 25, 2021, and letters written to various stakeholders inviting written submissions. 10 entities made written and oral presentations to the committee on how to improve our cybercrimes framework. These include the following: the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, currently now Education and Youth, Ministry of National Security and Communication, Forensics and Cybercrime Division of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, a joint presentation, Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, and the Jamaica Technology and Digital Alliance, a joint presentation. Financial Services Commission, University of West Indies Department of Computing, University of Technology Jamaica, Jamaica Bankers Association, Simtai Consulting Limited. The committee was ably supported by the technical and legal officers from the former Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, the Legal Reform Department, Attorney General's Chambers, and the Office of the Parliamentary Counsel. Consequent on the advancement in technology, there has been an increase in the use of various technological tools or devices to commit sophisticated cyber attacks or threats. In many instances, new ways have been found to commit old crimes, and in some instances, new crimes have been created. Whilst we cannot completely prevent cyber incidents or the misuse of technology, as far as practical, we should ensure that our laws are adequately robust and technology neutral to put us in a position to address these unacceptable practices and the consequences that flow from them. As such, the Cybercrimes Act seeks to criminalize the misuse of computers, computer programs, or data to commit crimes and particular activities directed against computers, computer programs, or data. Criminalize the abuse of electronic means of completing transactions, and facilitate the investigation and prosecution of cybercrimes. The committee benefited from information shared by the Jamaica Cyber Incident Response Team and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, which indicated the main categories of reported cyber incidents, that is, abusive content, impersonation, and revenge porn. The number of incidents referred to the Communications, Forensic, and Cybercrime Division of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and the number of cybercrime cases in parish courts from 2017 to 2020. The committee noted that the approach taken by the financial institutions in treating with these cyber incidents makes it difficult to adequately assess the scale of the cybercrimes issues in Jamaica. Consequently, the committee recommended that an obligation be placed on financial institutions to report, even in an anonymous manner, to the Bank of Jamaica the aggregate number of cyber fraud cases, and that the Bank of Jamaica and the Financial Services Commission collect data relating to these cases and make it available to law enforcement agencies and the public on an aggregate basis. With respect to the malicious communications, the committee raised concerns about the attack on a person's reputation in cyberspace and expressed a view that a line should be drawn between free speech, where a person expresses disapproval or dislike for someone or something, and speech that would place a person's life, career, and income at risk. The committee was advised that an offense that constituted defamatory comments should be addressed by the civil court as a neutral arbiter instead of a criminal court, and that injunctive relief could be sought. The committee, while expressing reservation regarding this observation, noted that Section 9 of the Cybercrimes Act covers the offense of malicious communication, therefore recommends that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution guidelines for prosecuting cases involving malicious communication, Section 9 of the Cybercrimes Act of Jamaica 2015, be included in any public education campaign to address the matter of malicious communication. The committee noted from the submissions received that stakeholders generally accepted the importance of the Act in addressing cybercrimes, but raised concern to relating of some of the provisions. A review of the report of the committee reveals that several amendments were proposed by stakeholders, but not all were accepted by the committee. The major amendments accepted and recommended by the committee will be highlighted. Section 4, access with intent to commit or facilitate commission of offense. It was recommended that Section 4.1 be amended to provide for harsher penalties where the offense relates to a child, and that the penalties under Section 4 and 5 of the Child Pornography Prevention Act should be considered. The committee supports the recommendation that there should be harsher penalties in relation to offenses against children, and that there should be a distinction between the penalties for offenses committed against children, by children, and adult offenders, and that the term of imprisonment be increased from 15 to 20 years for an adult who commits an act where the victim is a child. Section 8, computer-related fraud or forgery, recommended that consideration be given to the introduction of an offense or category of offense that treats with the possession, creation, reproduction of electronic copies of forged documents. Committee was advised that the forgery of certain documents was considered a felony and attracted custodial sentence for a term of 7 years up to life imprisonment. And other documents, if forged, were considered a misdemeanor and attracted a penalty of imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years. Having been made to understand that the Forgery Act is technology neutral and treats with certain types of forged documents, the committee recommended that the amendments be made to the Forgery Act to take into account the creation of an offense generally relating to the possession of forged documents with the intent to defraud or deceive. Section 9, use of the computer for malicious communication. One stakeholder, Madam Speaker, recommended that the Cybercrimes Act be amended to include hate speech as a type of communication deserving of punitive treatment. The committee was advised by the Legal Reform Department that the issue of hate speech engaged several rights under the Constitution, especially the freedom of expression. It was suggested that the ministry with responsibility for information should take the lead in crafting provisions on the offense of hate speech. On the issue of revenge porn or the sharing of an intimate image, the committee was informed that some jurisdictions address this matter in a technological neutral way, whereby the form of publication was not limited to computers. It was suggested that the proposal to create an offense of revenge porn could be included in Section 9, the scope of which was sufficiently wide as the provision addressed data published with an intention to harass or cause harm. Consequently, the committee recommends that Section 9 be amended with consideration being given to, among other things, the following: replacing the word publish with send and defining publish along the following lines. Publish in relation to data includes sending, transferring, posting, disseminating, or otherwise providing access to data, and a new subsection be inserted to make provision for intimate images. The committee expressed concern about the frequent sharing of images of scenes of accidents involving personal injury or death, as the same could place a person depicted in the images, their family, and others in distress. It questioned if the sharing of these images would be addressed by the Cybercrimes Act. If not, whether a provision could be inserted to address same. After careful consideration, the committee noted that Section 9(1) of the Act would address the issue, but the intent to harass, cause harm, or the apprehension of harm would have to be proven. The committee also took note of the Office of Director of Public Prosecution's guidelines for prosecuting cases involving malicious communication on the said section, and observed that if the intent could be proven, the person affected could be pursued in a civil lawsuit. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the committee recommends that the public education campaign should be considered by the then MSET, now the Office of the Prime Minister, regarding the Data Protection Act 2020, which should include content that will assist to dissuade persons from the practice of sharing these types of images. The committee also recommends that there be a discussion with the police and the Director of Public Prosecution regarding Section 9 and how it can be used to address cases reported by citizens. Section 10, unlawful making available devices or data for commission of offense. Committee supports the proposal that Section 10 be amended to bring into law with the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime by providing that an offense is committed if a person without unlawful justification intentionally manufacture, sells, import, distributes, discloses, or otherwise make available a computer, any key, or any other data or device that is designed or adapted primarily for the purpose of committing an offense under any of section 3 to 9, or receives or possesses an item mentioned in subparagraph A, B, or C with the intent that it be used by any person for the purpose of committing an offense under any section 3 to 9. Section 11, offense relating to protected computers. The Section 11 of the Cybercrime Act seeks to impose harsher sanctions where the offense committed is against or involves computers and/or systems, the interference with which would have a debilitating impact on, among other things, security, the provision of public service, and public health and safety. The committee accepts the recommendations of one stakeholder that the section be amended to include protected computer systems that are necessary for or used directly in connection with the revenue services. Additionally, it recommends that the word medical in section 11.2e be changed to the word health, as the same is a broader term and covers all health systems. Section 6.15, compensation. In considering the recommendation of one stakeholder that section 15 be more definitive to allow compensation to be ordered as a matter of course and not only at the discretion of the court or an application of the complainant, the committee recommended that the provision be amended to carve out a regime similar to section 24A of the Criminal Justice Administrative Amendment Act 2018. Section 19, record of seized materials. One stakeholder raised concern regarding the time for the execution of warrants for materials seized and pointed out that the term as soon as possible was too wide. The committee took note of the fact that law enforcement officers' compilation of a list of items seized depended on a number of factors to include the size of the data seized and whether the data was intelligible form. In order to treat with the issues relating to the way in which the law enforcement agencies carried out their investigation, the committee was advised that it might be useful to amend the Act to include a provision that standard operating procedures be developed and observed in carrying out these investigations. The committee therefore recommends that the standard operating procedures be placed either in the primary or secondary legislation as part of investigative procedures, even if they are merely specific guidelines on matters such as a time frame within which entities should act. Section 20, forfeiture. Cybercrime Act empowers the Director of Public Prosecutions to apply for a forfeiture order and sets out the criteria that must be satisfied by a parish court judge or a judge of the Supreme Court in order to make a forfeiture order. It was suggested that the category of officers who can make a forfeiture application should be extended to include clerk of the courts. The Office of Director of Public Prosecutions confirmed that based on the current wording of the provision, it prevents clerk of the courts from making an application for the forfeiture of computer material after a conviction is obtained. In light of this, the committee recommends that section 22 of the Act be amended to make reference to the prosecution instead of the Director of Public Prosecutions in order to include all facets of the prosecutorial service into the ambit of those who could apply for forfeiture. Other recommendations, other than amendments to existing sections of the Act, stakeholders made several recommendations for the inclusion of new offenses. These include disclosure of a key for a protected computer to an authorized person, unauthorized disclosure of a password or access code, and unlawful divulging of information. Use of premises for the commission of an offense, cyber stalking, making false publication, cyber squatting or cloning, cyber defamation, cyber threat, dissemination of obscene materials, illegal selling or trafficking, identity and data theft, cyber extortion, cyber bullying, webjacking, aiding and abetting of a child dealing for the purpose of sexual abuse, intentional withholding message delivered erroneously, and possession of skimmers and card readers without lawful excuse. Phishing, spoofing, spamming, and social engineering. In its consideration of these offenses, the committee found that the various provisions of the existing Cybercrimes Act treated with some of these offenses, while other pieces of legislation were better suited to address others. These legislations include Child Pornography Prevention Act, Defamation Act, Education Act, Larceny Act, Law Reform, Fraudulent Transactions, Special Provisions Act, Obscene Publication Suppression of Act, Offenses Against the Persons Act, Sexual Offenses Act, and Terrorism Prevention Act. Further, the committee noted during its deliberations that some of the general concerns raised by stakeholders would be best addressed in cybersecurity legislation, such as the protection of critical systems, standards and guidelines for assessors of cyber services of protected systems, the establishment of a cybersecurity authority, which is well underway, and guidelines and standards for the protection of protected computers. The committee therefore recommends that cybersecurity legislation be promulgated subject to consultation with stakeholders and Cabinet's approval. Madam Speaker, as chairperson of the Joint Select Committee, the opportunity is taken to extend my gratitude to all the members of the committee for their active participation and commitment to the task of ensuring our cybercrime legislation is current and robust. The technical and legal team from the various government agencies that worked assiduously in reviewing and conducting research in relation to every stakeholder recommendation, and last but not least, the clerk of the House and her staff for the support of the committee. Madam Speaker and members of this Honorable House, you would have seen the report of your committee as tabled, and having opened the debate on the same, Madam Speaker, it is my wish to invite members to speak on the report, after which I'll put the motion to this Honorable House that the motion be approved. Again, Madam Speaker, it was a pleasure to be and a privilege to have been asked to chair this Joint Select Committee. This now has been transferred to the office of the Prime Minister under Minister Dana Dixon, who I'm sure will take it through the necessary stages in the upper house, and I hope that we will be able to see the improvements that we have made in this review, which are so critical to not only Jamaica, but the world in this new age. It is unfortunate, Madam Speaker, that the opposition is not here to participate, because a lot of this would be useful for them to acknowledge in how we go forward in our day-to-day political campaigning today, going forward into the future. I thank you.
Members, if there are no contributions at all to the debate, may I invite the Minister to close it and ask for the approval of the motion.
Madam Speaker, after closing the debate, I ask that the motion and the report be approved and adopted.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion brought by the Minister be approved and adopted. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Just before you rise, House Leader, we're here this evening and, you know, time moves on and they say tomorrow is promised to no one. Life has become so short, and it behoves all of us to cherish it and treat each other with the kindness that we ought to. This evening, I just want to bring to the attention of us as members the passing of the mother of our hard-working member from Manchester Central. Not only hard-working, but new to the arena, very young, and under attack from all angles. She has worked. Her shoulders, I am happy to say, are broad, because if they are not broad, you dare not survive this arena. But she's doing well. At this time, she has lost her mother. And I want you to know that we all take note of it, and we really want to express our condolence at this time. I'm just looking because I think I would just like to do two things. To share with you that the service will be on Saturday, the 7th of October at 11 at the Mandeville Evangelistic Center. And on Friday night, October 6th, is the setup. Now, I'm not going to borrow what I saw take place recently, but since we're all colleagues in here, we can lend all the support she will need, whether by hugs and kisses in cash or in kind. And we thank you all very much. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, it's not proposed to do any further business this afternoon, so I now ask that the House be adjourned until next Tuesday, the 26th. Next Tuesday, the 26th, at 2 p.m.
Members, the question before the House is that we do adjourn until next Tuesday, the 26th of September. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.